Welcome to your Mental Health Matters podcast, a community-minded mental health podcast providing real-life mental health talks supporting parents, educators, and students.
Welcome back to another episode of Your Mental Health Matters. Today we've got an exciting topic: parenting, teenagers, everything to do with teens, whether it's stewarding relationship with teens, supporting the mental health of teenagers, as well as having some tough conversations about some of those interesting topics that as parents, how do we navigate that? Thankfully, we've got some experienced professionals and some experienced parents here to talk about it as well.
Right.
But before we get to today's topic, we've got some exciting news. So first, Chantal, I'll let you share your news, and then Mel will share some more exciting news about our podcast as well.
Awesome. Well, I've had so much fun this year recording the podcast. But next year I will be taking some time away because we are expecting.
That is fantastic.
So exciting.
News.
Yay!
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. So I'll be stepping away from the podcast next year as I'm on maternity leave. I might pop in for an episode or
We hope
so.
you do.
Some guest appearances.
Yeah, some guest appearances, but we will have a new representative for the Catholic School Board next year.
Right, which we're really happy that Joni will be joining us. So, but Joni brings so much great experience working in the Catholic School Board. You are a registered psychologist.
Yes.
You are a play therapist. Mm-hmm. And which school are you at right now, just so that the audience knows where you are
I'm located at Our Lady of the Rivers.
That's a new name.
It's a new name, yep. It's supposed to be Father Turcotte.
Okay.
That's what it's well known as, but now it's been switched to Our Lady,
Our
of the
Lady of the
Rivers. So
Rivers.
next
I did
year,
not know
everybody
that.
will know it as the Our Lady of the Rivers.
Okay, so Joni's going to be joining us next year, and she came in today to be a guest for us to get to know each other and for us to for our audience to get to know Joni. And then Joni will bring a different angle because you are a play therapist. You have so much you could contribute to these conversations. And just based off your own personal experience as a parent, but also as a play therapist and working in a school system for as long as you have. Because you were a teacher previously as well, right?
Yes, yep.
Right. Well, we're
Yep,
very, very happy.
I
to
taught
have
for
you.
6 years for the public district, actually.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and then I transitioned into counseling. I took my Master of Counseling and
Right.
transitioned into there, and I started with the Catholic district in 2011.
Okay.
So yeah, this is my 10-year.
Congratulations and
Very
welcome to our
cool.
podcast. We're
So
very
good.
excited to have you with
Yeah,
us.
I'm excited to join.
Yeah.
A couple of fun facts about Joni as well. She grew up very near the Bay of Fundy. So just before we were talking, I was like, I love visiting there. So you lived in a small town close to there, right, Joni?
Yes, yeah, a small town called
Yes.
Penfield.
Very
Okay.
Those of you
cool.
that know the area.
No, I don't.
And also you have 2 children. So we were just talking before the podcast. You're excited about today's episode.
Yes,
you kinda
I
have
have 2 young
preteens.
boys, age 7 and 11. So one is going to hit the teen years soon. So I'm excited about what you guys have to say about teens.
You know, we should even let's talk about what the ages are of our kids so that
Yeah.
our audience knows. So
Totally.
7 and 11, right? Joel, your kids are...
Well, talking about exciting news, we're having a baby next month. So that's some more exciting news.
that's right. I forgot
So
about that.
Soon
Congratulations.
to be, I guess, 1 month old, 2.5, and almost 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
And of course, Chantal expecting her
This
first.
is my first.
That's right. And I have 5. Now, give me a second while I remember their ages because it takes me a few minutes. 18, 20, 20, 21, and 22. Yes, that's their ages.
You passed the test.
I think so.
Wow.
Don't ask me their birthdays.
So Mel's going to be a wealth of experience in today's
Well,
topic. We
been
have the
there,
theory.
done
Yes.
that.
I help, parents in sessions that work with a lot of teenagers, but you have that real
Yeah.
life lived experience as a parent, which is
And
highly
I
valuable
can
too.
tell you all the stuff that I learned in books is only a very, very small part of it.
Right.
It's learning through experience and knowing your child.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of things you could speak about as well with your play therapy background
Yeah.
and those connections at the beginning, right?
Yeah, exactly. Start
So
young
true.
and build those relationships is so important.
It really is.
So good. Well, let's dive into today's topic.
Yes.
Regarding teenagers, we see some changes as children grow up from children to teenagers. One of the main ones, of course, right now, I love it. I'm the kid's world. Whether I go away, I come home, Dad, you're home. It's so exciting,
So
right?
exciting to see you.
I just wish it could stay that way forever. But I'm sure a day will come where it's a little different, right?
Unfortunately, it does come.
And that's one of the biggest shifts we see as children grow older, that influence of their friends becomes the focus versus parents.
That's right.
Yes.
What are some of those other changes that you might see as psychologists, as practitioners, as well as parents? What have we seen that way too?
I think one thing to keep in mind is adolescence is a time for exploring your identity. And so that's something that kids often struggle with as well, is trying to find where they fit into the world, and with different friend groups, and experimenting a little bit with different, I call them masks, trying to figure out who you are, where you fit in. And so giving your kids that courage to explore that.
Yeah.
I think that's a really big part of it too, because that identity is so important.
It is. It really is. And when you think of teenagers, that push-pull, they want their independence, so they push you away, but they need you the most for guidance. And that is such a fine line to walk as a parent, to go, I'm still guiding you, but I'm stepping back and letting you have that autonomy. And when do you need me? When do you don't? So you're playing this game constantly with your teens, because they need you, but they may not be articulating that. They really struggle with that area.
It's almost like that dance with a circle of security.
That's
I was just
exactly
thinking the
what I
same
was
thing.
thinking.
Yes.
You're here, you're letting them explore, and then when they need you,
Yes.
they're coming back for that safe haven. It's just
That's
kind of
exactly
that dance.
it. It doesn't change. And teenagers, they need it. We hear a lot that the early years are so important, but when they're teenagers, they are experimenting so much and they are involved in more at-risk behavior. They need to have an adult that's trusted, who can advise them and guide them in the right direction. And that's why parents can't, I was going to say parents can't check out. I don't believe parents want to check out. But sometimes parents go, this is your opportunity to fly. This gives me an opportunity to figure out who I am. I would say the opposite. When your kids are that age, you got to hone in more and just really be present.
It's so true. The dance looks different, and we also have to parent a little bit different. If I parented my 13-year-old in the same way I parented my 3-year-old, I'm going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
My kids are going to be like, you're lame, Dad. Like,
That's
get
right,
lost,
exactly.
So the dance probably is a bit more space.
Yeah.
They want some of that space, but they still want to know that you care and support them. And actually, one of my good friends, his children are just into their early 20s, and I really enjoy just watching him parent his teenagers and learn a lot from how he's always present, there to support his kids, but he also gives them the freedom to kind of make some mistakes and learn from themselves.
That's a tough one.
Right?
I was just about to say, like, you want to be able to hone in and to help, but at the same time, you need to be able to step back enough so that they can try things on their own and that they can fail. Because one of the hardest things is when you're a teenager, and if you're not used to failing, like, that's something that you need to learn to get through, that I can fail at something and I can still make it through it.
Yep.
Right? So having that space to explore and fail at the little things before they go out into the world and they become adults and independent.
Because it's safe at home.
Yeah.
They can do it at home.
And failures are bigger.
Yep.
Right? So being able to understand and navigate that as a teenager with that support.
I just love how our podcast tracks, because we had a whole bunch of questions from the viewers, and you're talking about the first question already. So how do we balance that setting boundaries, saying no, while giving that opportunity to grow and learn? That was one of the direct questions we had. So I don't know, team, what do we think about that one?
Oh, I have lots to say about that, but I won't monopolize the time. So if someone wants to speak about that first, I'm more than happy to take a step back.
No, jump in.
You probably have lots of experience. You've seen it in real life too, right?
Okay, sure. Their timeline. It's got to be on their timeline. And that is one of the hardest things as a parent, because we're exhausted. We're getting older. 10, 8, I said 10, but now I'm bringing it back to 8, 9 o'clock, we're exhausted.
Right.
Yes.
But your teen wants to talk to you and it's 11 o'clock. And you have to put your game face on and you have to listen. And they're talking about something that you really struggle with, or you're tired, or you know is a more heightened conversation, but you got to stay focused and you got to give them that time. And you got to do that for the little things. So the parent mentioned boundaries. You got to decide in your head, where is your boundary?
Yeah.
What is the battle you want to choose? Is this going to be a lesson to teach them about respect, about using language, or is this to teach them that they could connect to and be themselves?
Yeah.
When is the time to enforce, you can't speak to me this way, you can't use that word in this house? Or when is it the time to go, this is a time that I'm connecting with my child and they're actually opening up to me? Shouldn't that be the bigger goal?
Yeah. A metaphor I often use, and I've done this in a lot of parenting webinars, is driving.
Yes.
So I show this picture of this 3-year-old driving the car down the road. It's a true story in the United States. It happened. And they got pulled over and the police were like, what's going on here? It was a 5-year-old driving or something, right? Yeah. And that's a picture for all of us as teens, whether it be social media or, going out, staying out, having opportunities to, perhaps drink or different things like that. Controversial topics we'll be talking about today, but this is real life
It's
that
real life
teenagers
for
are
teens.
wondering about, right?
Yeah.
How do we have those conversations and also build it in such a way that there's driver's training, there's steps they're taking to showing they can grow their circle of responsibility,
Yes.
earn those privileges and stay safe. As I think about that, for my kids, it scares me, but not really, because probably the first time my kids are going to experience some of those things will hopefully be in my house.
Right.
They can have their kids over
Controlled.
in the basement, have their friends over,
That's
do
right.
some of that stuff, but just making sure it's in an environment where it's safe,
Yeah.
they feel cared for and supported. So finding those small steps. Maybe your teenager, wants to go out and have some beverages and they're 17 years old. Well, you could say no and have a hard no, and they might end up, in some pretty sketchy places.
That's a good
Yeah.
point, Joel.
Right.
So you have to recognize that compromise, that what you see as a deal breaker, you need to be able to have that line be a little bit flexible to
Yeah.
teach them.
I think this brings me back to running Circle Security. I love that program. And we talk about fear in that program. And a lot of parents will say to me, well, I think it's healthy for my child to fear me.
Right.
A little bit of fear is healthy. And I always counteract that with, it's okay for kids to fear consequences,
Right.
but they should never fear the parent.
And that type of parenting might work for a young child, but
not
as it
for a
gets older,
teenager.
No.
Yikes.
I think about as a teenager, teenagers are going to go out and experiment. They're going to get into some dangerous situations, some sticky situations, and you want to know that you have raised your child that if anything bad happens, you are their first phone call.
So true.
That's
You
right.
are a resource for them.
That's right.
Regardless of, they know they're still going to get grounded. There's still consequences to those actions, but they know that regardless of what happens in life, they can call you.
Yeah, there's a level of respect there.
That's
Yes.
right.
That they're going to come. Otherwise, it's going to be their friends will be their
Totally.
first choice.
Yeah.
And we all know that for teenagers, their primary person is usually their friend, their peers, not their parent. So how do we come in and be parents, but kind of have that friendship, kind of loosening up on those parental ways, right?
Yeah.
This is a very key topic because I've been working in family counseling with a number of families, of course, in different areas, so it's not identifiable. And a key topic is, especially dads, how do I parent my teenage daughters?
Right.
Oh.
And what that might look like isn't, making sure they do the dishes and
That's right.
chores and all those things, we've been sharing and talking about.
Yeah.
Being a parent looks different. And a big part of it, especially maybe for a parent who might not feel as connected to their kids,
Yeah.
it's not being the fun parent, but it's being the relationship-based parent. Our parenting isn't focused as much on, chores or doing logistics or making sure they're doing this, this, and this. Of course, I want my children to do well in school and all of those things, but
Yeah.
especially when relationships are more strained
Yeah.
in families, that's where we really have to pivot and shift our parenting to make sure it's relationship first.
Right. And how do we do that? How do we do that? Because that's what the parents are going to want to know.
Yeah.
They're going to say, okay, that sounds great in theory. I've been parenting this way for 16, 15 years, and it's always been do this, do that, do this. I love you, but do this. So how do we shift that?
Well, here's a fun story. I was watching Dwayne Johnson and Young Rock yesterday. I'm not sure if it's a true story, but it was maybe based on his character in the show, which is
Right.
himself. So who knows? But he calls his daughters every day and sings this song to them. And the person said, "Why do you do that?" He said, "Because I always want to have that relationship with my kids." So whether it's a group text,
Right.
or just fun messaging, or getting into Snapchat, not embarrassing your kids and going in there, but
Right.
whatever it might be, is getting into their world, playing ping pong, shooting some hoops, whatever it is. But I think it's really finding out what they're passionate about
Yeah.
and getting into their world.
And honing into
Yeah,
that.
attuning to what their
Yes.
interests are. Like,
Yeah.
when they're young, it's Paw Patrol, and then it kind of morphs into different things
Yes.
as they grow
Yes.
older, but, keep that key interest in
Yeah.
what they're
So you
into.
have to be an investigator, even as a teenager, to a parent to a teenager, you have to investigate something that you could find mutual, because sometimes it may be a little more difficult to bridge that.
And in Circle Security, we looked at the needs on the circle at the top, and one of them is enjoy with me.
Right.
And as our
Yeah.
kids get older,
Yeah.
we're like, well, how do I enjoy
That's the
with?
best.
But that's where you find that common ground,
Yeah.
right? It's easier to get on the floor and play with a toddler or a child and play Lego, but then how do you find time to enjoy with your teenager? And I think that's what you're talking about, right? Like those silly phone calls, that's an enjoy with me moment. Or playing basketball, or finding different ways that you can relate to somebody. You can laugh with somebody, because when you can laugh with somebody, that just strengthens that connection. You ever have that really like deep belly laugh, and then you just feel so good afterwards and so connected? So finding those moments with your teenager. And I think a really important part of that is looking for those nonverbals of when it's an appropriate time.
Right.
Because if your teenager is having a really bad day and you're starting to joke with them and be silly, that's not the time, right? No. So being able to pick up on their nonverbals and their cues of what they need, which can look different for many different kids, right? I often talk with parents all the time, and one of the ones that keep coming up is when your child is lingering or hovering. Right?
What are they trying to communicate to you then?
Yeah, and so before it's like, oh, well, I don't want someone hovering over me while I'm cooking dinner or I'm doing this. Like, go do something.
Go.
But using that time now, like, hey, you know what? If you're going to stand here, why don't you pick up a knife and help me?
Peel the carrots.
Right.
Or,
engaging them even in your world too.
Yeah. So finding that way to pick up on their cues and to understand what they need in that moment and kind of taking yourself out of it.
That's a good thing. I was just thinking that exact statement of my own parenting, and what I've learned is I have to put my own feelings aside, my ego aside, and let them feel like they're in the driver's seat a little bit.
So
if I don't let them be in the driver's seat, they don't start feeling that they could trust me to have those conversations, because I'm not letting them lead them. And that causes a breakdown, because it's always on my terms, what I want, how I want it. So I leave the options open so that they feel they have more control over.
And in the busyness of everyday life,
Exactly.
like, I got to get this done, I got to get chores done.
Exactly.
Trying to get them to help you out and not taking the time to listen to them.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's key to it.
That's right.
Such a great point, because relationships, they're not rocket science. They just take hard work.
They
so
do.
very practically, whether it's for couples or parent and teen, families, it's actually setting a specific time, even just for 5 minutes a day and doing this. And you might tell your teen, okay, teen, I want to hang out with you a bit more and build this relationship. You choose the time, you pick the activity, and I'll be there. Let's set our watches, let's set our iPhones, and we'll show up at the same time every day, or whatever that looks like if we're on shift work, and just be consistent with that. Might be 5 minutes of playing ping pong, shooting hoops, watching some anime together, video games, things that might be outside of our wheelhouse, but things that they want to do.
And you could say, teach me about them.
Exactly.
How many times I've sat through one of my son playing guitar, tell me what this does, and I'm clueless, or somebody's playing some game and I really have no idea, but I listen and I could see he's getting more animated, talking to me, and this happened and this happened, and I'm like, and I'm getting right into it, but on the inside I'm like, I have no idea what's going on.
Smile and nod. So the teen picks the time, they pick the location, and as parent you just show up. But the
That's
non-negotiable is connecting.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yep.
That's
Shut off
beautiful.
your phone. It's you, me time.
Yeah, so good. Well, as we wrap up this segment, one final question from our viewers as well. Parental burnout. I'm just feeling like a failure, just need to take a break from my parenting my teenager. What do I do? How do I navigate that?
That's a big one, because they always come to you when you may not have a lot left in your system. Your bucket may not be full. They are coming to you at a time that's appropriate to them. And then if you're asked to continue to fill that for them or be that for them, that's going to make you even more burnt out. So in my opinion, I think I would look at it as, if I'm feeling burnt out, I'd be making my child aware, my youth, my teen aware that I'm struggling today, and like having a rough day, and I know we're supposed to have this conversation. Can we have it tomorrow? But book a specific time. Like, don't just throw it up, because then they're going to think, okay, Mom has more important things to do, Dad.
Yeah.
So it's okay to be real and say, I'm having a rough day, or I'm really exhausted. Can we chat about this tomorrow when I'm able to think clearer and back in my thinking brain and not being emotional? Because if they see you have bad days, it also teaches them that it's okay for them. So it's got to go both ways. If your teen comes to you and says, I'm having a bad day, I really don't want that. As great as this is, I value my alone time right now more. I need that more so, and it can't be taken personally. Yes.
That's okay, right? And that's the really big thing about parenting is you're modeling.
Mm-hmm.
You're modeling the behavior, because we tell our kids, oh, well, we want you to come to me.
Yeah.
We want you to be able to walk away. But yet we need to be modeling that stuff for them. And we
Exactly.
want them to open up and talk to us about what they're going through and their vulnerabilities. That means that we have to be vulnerable,
That's right.
right? We have to be able to open up and, just be human,
That's it.
right?
Yeah.
Kids,
Yeah, we
Kids
all make
need to see
mistakes,
it.
so if you model that, it's okay. We can work through it.
One important thing for parents, I think, is recognizing parental burnout. What are the signs and the symptoms that you are burning out?
Yes.
And so that you can actively and consciously do things to counteract that.
Right.
Right? So, Joel, during the break there, you were talking about supporting Cass. So making sure that you have a support system and that you rely on your support system and that you lean on them, because I don't think parenting is meant to do alone.
No.
Like,
So true.
It takes a village.
it takes a
It
village.
does.
Like,
Yeah.
there's a reason why that's a saying,
Yeah.
and it takes so many. And I know for a lot of parents here in Fort McMurray, they don't have a lot of
That's
family
what I was
around,
just thinking.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I know back when I grew up in a small town in Newfoundland. Everybody raised me, right? I had tons of aunts and uncles and
That's right.
grandparents around. But up here, a lot of people are isolated. So finding those support networks within the community.
And there are
within-
them. There are those
Yeah.
those supports. There really are, and the schools can help with that. Sorry, I completely cut
No,
you off.
no,
I
that's-
apologize.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. And I know that Canadian Mental Health has a Parent Connect.
That's right.
So you can always reach out to them as well. And it's just a great way to connect with other parents going through similar things. So always taking time to reflect on your bucket and whether or not you're empty, because as much as it's cliche, you can't pour from an empty
It's
cup.
true. It's true.
Right? So making sure that you're becoming aware of it and you're able to communicate that to the people around you.
And the schools do have counselors, so for a parent to say, you know, these are things that I'm looking for, can you give me some supports in the community to help me with that? The schools are a great resource for parents trying to figure out what they need. They can look into that and go, yes, CMHA, yes, SOS office mentoring, so that's a little bit less pressure on you, mom and dad, and someone else can kind of help with supporting your child. And there are a lot of opportunities if there's no immediate family in the community, but
Yeah.
reaching out for help is the biggest piece of it.
Yes.
So true. So true. Beautiful, team. So the next area we're going to touch on is mental health, and we'll talk about some teen talks or tough topics as well. We've got a great question about mental health. Let's say you have a teenager who does not recognize or is not aware of their own mental health. How do we as a parent help those teenagers who think they're fine or don't feel like they have mental health challenges?
Wow, that's a tough one.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
My first thought is validating and normalizing it, because I
Totally.
think we all have. And you may not have a diagnosis of anxiety. You may not have a diagnosis of depression, but you could have depressive feelings. You could have anxious feelings. So I would start validating it in myself, like, oh, I'm feeling really anxious today, or using those words, and oh, I get that feeling that's, my stomach is fluttering, and start using that in your everyday language around your teens to know that it's okay
Yeah.
to talk about those things. And, do you ever feel that way? Yeah, I do. Because if you just say, you have anxiety.
Right.
No, mom, I don't. It's going to turn into a fight. But if you
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
I see that just before test time, I could see that you're really struggling. I know I would feel that way if I was having a test, right? You validate it and then say, this may be some anxiety. Do you want to talk about what anxiety may look like? And ask them, ask permission to talk about it. Don't just tell them that's what they're
So true.
experiencing.
Yeah.
Can you just say that one more time?
Ask permission to talk about it, because
Yeah.
they may not want to. And again, their timeline. If there's one thing I could tell you parents, that's it, their timeline.
So true.
It has to be on their timeline, because they need to feel they have control.
Yeah.
I think one of the great things that I have noticed in working with teenagers is that they're very open about therapy. Like
They are.
like I have adolescents that are like, oh yeah, I was telling my friends about therapy and what I learned, and they're just more open about it. So I think as a parent, again, having that conversation and normalizing counseling. Right? And saying, you know what, if you are struggling and you don't want to talk to me about it,
That's right.
we can find somebody else for you to talk to if you would like to talk to a counselor or you want to talk to your school counselor. Just giving them avenues that it's not just you, right? Like if they don't feel comfortable talking to you, they can go somewhere else.
Right.
So true.
Right.
So true. That's what I was going to say too. You know, I see teenagers who don't even want to talk to me as a counseling was. So I said, that's okay.
Great.
Who are the one or two people you feel comfortable talking to?
There we go.
Whether it be
Yeah.
a friend, a parent, and that's what we can say as parents. It's okay, you don't want to talk to me about this, but who are the one or two people you can lean in on? And
Because there needs to be someone.
a really amazing part, it
Yeah.
ties into the next question about the mental health resources available for children and teens in Fort McMurray. We have amazing resources at the school. I work in many
Yes.
school boards, love working in all kinds of school boards, but the mental health resources, the counseling we have at each school is really quite incredible. So that's always a great first point of contact. Maybe your child doesn't want to go somewhere else, but maybe they could talk to that person in the school they might already know, who's their friendly neighborhood school counselor.
Connection already based.
Right.
Yeah, right? So that's
Exactly.
already
And you
there.
probably know all about that, Joni, working in the schools as a psychologist too.
There's counselors in every school, and
Yeah.
you can kind of have that connection made. Parents just need to reach out.
Yeah.
And that's it. If you don't know, you can't help, right? So we do encourage parents to reach out. We are part of your village.
So
That's
true.
what I was about to say. It goes
Yep.
back to it takes a village. You don't have to be an expert
No.
in
Yeah.
mental health to help your teenager. You can find some support for them because it can be an uncomfortable
Very true.
conversation,
Yeah.
right?
And whether it be your classroom support teacher, learning assistance coordinator, fancy terms we use at FMPSD and PSD,
Yeah.
or your
Yeah.
homeroom teacher or school admin, the teams here are just so well versed in supporting mental health. You might not know what to do as a parent, but a great starting point is just reaching out to your school, and we'd be happy to lead and guide you down that journey.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Which ties into another hot topic around academics. How do we support students at school, especially teenagers who don't want to do their schoolwork?
Oh, hot topic.
Not wanting to go to school, all that stuff.
Yeah, that's been a topic of conversation this year.
Yeah, it's
a
a big
lot
one.
of school refusal, a lot of work refusal.
Work avoidance, yeah.
Yeah, so I think one thing that we as a district have been looking at, and we actually did some PD on this, is figuring out why.
Yeah.
Right, taking that time again, connection based, relationship based, figuring out that why. There's no child that wants to be difficult.
That's right.
I don't believe that there's a difficult child. It's just they're going through something. So being able to take that time and figure it out.
Right.
What is it about school? What is it about the work? And often when you sit down and you provide space, you hear the reasons why. And it's often, well, I don't have any friends.
That's right.
Nobody will play with me at recess. Or there's a kid that keeps calling me stupid. Or I feel stupid.
I'm frustrated about this. I can't get good grades in this, and if I'm not in at least in 80%, that means I'm failing, or I'm not going to get into good college or university because the stressors of an older child, right?
Yeah.
It takes investigating.
And I think with teenagers, one of the hard things is social media, right? Like, I think
It's-
about bullying.
Yes.
And when I was in high school, the bullying stopped when I left high school, right?
Right.
Like when I went
When you
home
went
for the
home.
day, it was done. And
Yeah.
now there's so much social media and it's so hard to get away from it. So being able to ask those questions of why? What is going on that you don't want to be in school and you don't want to be in that environment? And when it comes to academics, oftentimes I have to say, in my experience, is the kids often feel like they can't do it.
Yes.
Like
Right.
they're not smart enough. And it's that internal self-talk that they have. And so helping them through that.
That's right. What it all comes back to, we need to connect with our kids so that they will have these conversations with us, because they won't have them with us, and we will be in the dark as well. So it's all about attachment,
Yeah,
connection.
and I was going to say creating that safe space for them, because if they
Right.
don't feel like they can express themselves, or they're not going to be heard,
Or they're gonna
because
get in
sometimes the
trouble.
parents will set it down out of fear,
That's
and
right.
so if they're willing to talk to other people in the school, then that's
I really believe that goes back to setting those boundaries and those things that what are the can do's and the can don'ts in this relationship. What are the areas that I'm okay with? If my child comes to me and says they get a 60 on a test but they gave it their all, is that going to be okay for me?
Yeah.
Right? And then having that understanding that the 80 or the 90% isn't the end all be all, but knowing that their child put the effort in, maybe it's an okay. It's good enough, and it is good for them, and be happy. So if you kind of know where your lines are with
Yeah.
regards to that, and you make it very known to your child why that's the line you have,
Totally.
it'll make it easier for them to come to you and say, Mom, I only got 60. Because the next words out of your mouth are going to be, did you try?
Yeah.
And you're like, I really did. I was like, okay. Then good for you for getting a 60.
Yeah. And normalizing that school is hard.
Yeah.
Like math can be hard, science can be hard,
that.
and that as a human you can't be amazing in all areas.
Yeah, that's right.
Like you're gonna struggle in some areas, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right, normalizing that.
Oh man, I'm just so passionate about this topic. I love getting to work in schools and to get to consult with complex families who are having some of those challenges bringing their children to school. Derek Peterson, he talks about having 5 anchors, and I think that's one thing. Both
Yes.
school boards are just absolute champions. I know all the
Yes.
support individuals at the high schools and junior highs here. They're all amazing, and to have them on your team, that's where we've found the success of working collaboratively with those other anchors, and especially for the teenager, being able to have 1 or 2 safe people in student services or whoever it might be. You know, there's been a few cases been working on maybe that the go-to person actually got promoted or they're at a different school. So now the student's struggling again. So we have to reconnect them. Who's their next go-to person? And as we do that, they're doing a little bit better again. Of course, there's many variables we're still working on, but being able to find those
Yeah.
supporting cast, and I don't know if anyone does it better than some of our schools. I
It's
just
true.
Yeah,
absolutely love
they
that.
used to have that where teachers would take a couple of students and just be their mentor, their
Yes.
person
That's
Right?
right.
Yeah.
that they connect with every day. Even just the, hey, check in.
Yeah.
Yes, so we need that, the supporting cast. The second part is vision. One of my favorite football coaches, I love the NFL. So Tony Dungy, he inspired me when I was a teenager myself. Tony says this: vision will ignite the fire of passion that fuels our commitment to do whatever it takes to achieve excellence. Our vision allows us to transform dreams of greatness into the reality of achievement through human action. Vision has no boundaries and knows no limits. Our vision is what we become in life.
Our vision is what
Right?
we become in life.
Very inspiring for football. Not many students, in junior high and high school are
They're going to be
there
rolling
with
their
that
eyes.
vision.
Yeah.
But to translate it, developing a vision for post-secondary, whether it's trades or this or that, why is school necessary for you?
That's right.
You might not like it. Maybe you might think half the classes are a waste of time or whatever it is. But what is your vision for being there?
Yeah.
What is your purpose? And for some students, it might be the RAP program, finding different avenues. But if you can find a why,
Yeah.
then you'll be able to do the what.
There we
Yes.
go.
Oh, I
But
like
until
that.
you can find your why, good luck.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
You
I
can
call it
lead a
the
horse to
dangling
water,
carrot.
but you can't make it drink.
Yeah.
That's
So
right.
I
Sense
think
of purpose.
finding the carrots, finding the vision, that is the absolute key.
Yeah.
And that goes back to relationship, having those conversations, figuring out what it is that your child is passionate about,
So true.
right?
And school counselors, guidance counselors, they're there to help with that.
They will do that.
Right? So that's what I always, if students are struggling with that, I say, you got to talk to the guidance counselor, look at your personality, look at some career interests or career insight.
Yeah.
Let's develop at least some direction there.
I know what parents are going to say. They're going to say, well, how does that work if my child wants to be an influencer? Or a YouTuber or a gamer, right?
I've had this
how does,
happen.
Yeah. How does, then how do you find the purpose? And I would say, who manages their money,
Right.
right? If you're going to be an influencer, if you're going to be a gamer, that's still a business, right? So how do you manage your money? How do you set that up? How do you create all of that? And I think our schools are so amazing at the diversity in the programs that they offer. And so finding clubs within your school that can help you get to that place, right?
Right.
So we don't discourage it. We just we encourage, okay, well, how can you use school
Right.
to your advantage to get to your dream,
Yeah.
right?
So
That's
true.
right.
And I'm a teacher, I'm a psychologist, I love working in schools. So just, take it with a grain of salt. But, for a teenager, if I'm having a conversation, the way I might talk to them is different than other
Very.
settings. So
Yes.
you might just think school's a complete waste of time. But what are you learning? Work ethic.
Yeah.
You're learning
Yes.
how to show up, do something that's important, and commit. And I don't know, I think I'm hooked in this Young Rock series, but it actually, it looks at his life. And
Yeah.
Dwayne Johnson, the Rock Johnson, if we don't know who I'm talking about, he actually played for the Calgary Stampeders.
Yeah.
And he's had a crazy, tumultuous, challenging life to be as successful as he is today.
Yeah.
Grit, hard work, all that stuff. And if students don't like school, I think it's a waste of time, fine, I'll agree with them. But what it's teaching is grit, hard work. Like you said, Mel, it doesn't matter what marks you're getting, what effort are you putting in?
That's right.
Yeah.
Are you putting in a little bit of time every day, even 20 minutes to focus in, do your studies, whatever it is? We're learning those life skills.
Transfer into the real world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not
Life
the
skills.
random
Not every
stuff
day
that
is,
is not.
Yeah.
That's exactly. And I think a lot of parents may say, yeah, but I have a child who hasn't really been in school for the last couple of years because of COVID, has been online, and there's a lot of work avoidance, school avoidance. What do I do with them? They're teenagers, so they feel they understand themselves and they know how to respond to everything. But the truth is they still need socialization. They still need to learn. And like, this goes back full circle to what you said at the beginning about making mistakes, learning from mistakes in a controlled environment. They need to be able to do that. And school provides them that opportunity with a soft spot to land. It's not the real world yet, right? So,
And we have some amazing alternative
yes.
education programs in both districts as well.
That's right.
With some very skilled individuals who can really help support some of those
That's right.
students too.
Especially if you have to hone in on some of those things with regards to some mental health needs or some other pieces that there's a little bit more complex. We have administrators, we have teachers who and counselors who can deal with that and work through that.
And sometimes modified partly online,
That's
partly in
right.
school, working whatever each child needs.
You always meet the child needs, meet them where they're at, figure out what's the best step, find the dangling carrot, find out what works for them to bring them into the school or getting them working, and then build passion, get that intrinsic feeling of, I got this, I can do this, and then watch them flourish, right? So,
Building on that sense of belonging, because sometimes
Yes.
they struggle to get
That's
over
it.
that hump of
Yes.
like getting back into school and having that connection and their passion.
And not everybody feels like they belong.
that's true.
Right?
Yeah,
So
That's true.
being able to create environments where students can feel
Yeah.
Yeah.
like they belong. And maybe that is a little bit more of a close relationship with a homeroom teacher or taking that time for our staff that are listening, taking that time to walk with the student and to make them feel seen and heard and to give them a space where they feel belong, because that's what we all want as
right.
humans, is
Yeah.
to feel like we belong and to feel like we're important.
And chances are most academic or school issues, if we can solve the belonging question, that's going to go a long way to solve the
It
rest of
solves so much more.
that. Right?
Yeah.
It really does.
Because
So-
students can't learn if they're not regulated.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
Feeling safe.
Yeah,
Comfortable belonging.
exactly.
Well, on that note
Yeah.
of belonging, our
Yes.
next teen topic, which is just diving in here, is dating.
Yes.
So,
it's a
Mel,
hot
you
topic.
probably have a lot of wisdom and experience in this.
yeah,
If you want to
yeah.
speak to it first,
Yes, I
then we'll
have.
share too.
Yeah, the dating, again, as parents, you have to decide what you feel is important for your
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
Because, and the other one, just as a side, you may choose, each child has a different timeline
Right.
based off of what they bring to the table.
Yes,
So
based on their
my-
level of responsibility.
Exactly,
how
their
they're
level
stewarding
of
it.
maturity. So you're 15 years old, you are already have a part-time job, you've shown that you could, do things from looking at different people's perspectives, you're showing maturity. Maybe dating is okay because you're able to look at things through a logical lens. Or you have a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 12-year-old who is struggling in a certain area and they need a little bit more time where you need to hold them a little bit longer. But that's a negotiation with your teen. You could say to them, you could say to your 14-year-old, how do you think you would respond if this happened or this happened, and play scenarios out with them to help them recognize what they will be doing in those moments. Having the sex talk is awkward. And if you as a parent have a hard time talking about sex, how do you think your child feels?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's when it comes to dating, it's about having those conversations beforehand.
Yes.
Right.
It can't
You
be the
want-
day before they're going out on a date with a friend.
No, you want to
Yeah.
introduce those topics early. And when kids are young, you can talk about friendships. What is a healthy friendship? Right? What is respect in a friendship?
That's right.
So good.
Yeah, because we want to make sure
Boundaries.
that whatever relationship they get into, it's a healthy one.
That's right.
Right? So being able to have those conversations really early before, like you said, the night before, probably not a good time.
But I guarantee that's when they'll be coming up to you and saying, Mom, I have a date tomorrow. Is that okay? That's usually what happens is they are in their own world and they're thinking of it this moment.
Right.
So they're going to come to you at 11 o'clock
Surprise.
at night while you're sitting on the couch and you're almost passed out. That's the time they're going to want to talk to you about it. Then you got to get all alert and go, let's talk about this. Okay, focus. I got to listen to my child right now, right?
So as the parent, taking that ownership of having difficult conversations. Yeah, they're going to be difficult and they might be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You
But
can
they're
say
necessary.
that. You can say, yeah, this is an uncomfortable conversation, but it's really important.
Yeah.
And having that conversation openly and letting them be able to ask questions. right?
And
Yep,
being
it's not
afraid
just a
of-
one-time
Totally.
conversation, like
Exactly.
over and over and over again.
Yes.
And I think a key thing is asking good questions. I feel like as
Yes.
parents, we decide how awkward the conversation's going to go. Sometimes just being chill.
Yes.
And, chances are when kids are 10, grade 4 or 5, there's a lot of dating happening in schools. So, of course, you want to be developmentally appropriate, but it's happening younger and younger.
Yes.
So even asking, just open-ended questions like, hey, is anyone kind of dating at school? Like,
Yeah.
how do you feel about that? What are your thoughts about that? And progressively having these small conversations throughout upper elementary into junior high will help you to prep. How do you know that's good for your friend there? What's healthy or not healthy? Having those healthy boundaries, I think, is a key thing too. Yeah, and the same thing can be said for gender diversity as well. It seems like there's an increasing amount of 10 and 11-year-olds. Parents are coming and asking, hey, my child's exploring this or wondering about this.
That's a good point.
And I think it's, important to ask good questions, and whether
Yeah.
it's gender diversity or just dating,
Yeah.
to hear a teenager out, to ask them why is this important to them, what they think about it, really seeking to understand before we provide any
Yeah.
feedback. But in a similar note, being able to say, yeah, you know what, I think these are really important conversations, and maybe let's just continue to think about those.
Yeah.
We don't have to kind of,
I really like that, Joel. I think that's a really good point there is you don't have to finish it all in one night. You're going
Yeah.
to have them over and over again. But it's okay to say, I don't have all the answers right now. Let's keep thinking on it
Totally.
and let's talk about it again.
and for the teenager to also be in the journey and say, this is one aspect of who you are, whether it's dating or gender diversity.
That's right.
It's an important way that you see yourself.
Yeah.
And also it's important for you to grow and mature as an individual. So you're kind of at a better place to understand these things
That's
too.
right.
Because sometimes we know just the complexity of mental health for children who are younger, whether it be dating or just the whole area of sexuality and gender diversity.
Right.
Sometimes can be really hard for a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
They just might not be cognitively and emotionally developed up
That's right.
yet to navigate some of that stuff. So
Yeah.
being so mindful and respectful of them, but at the same time, as parents, validating them and saying, let's continue to journey in this, because I think sometimes working with some of these parents, they feel, pressure to say one thing or another thing.
Yeah.
That's
Should I
a
let
very
this
good point.
happen? Should
Keep
I say
in mind that the
yes?
teens are at a stage where you're
Right.
developing your identity.
Yeah.
And figuring those things out and takes
Yeah.
time.
And I think an important question is, what does that mean to you? What does dating mean to you?
I was just thinking that.
Right? What
Yeah.
does gender diversity mean to you?
Yeah, find out how they interpret it, what they feel that is
Yeah,
about.
because we might have our own.
Goodness, dating,
Yeah.
that means sex. They're going to have sex. No,
Yeah.
that doesn't. That's not what it means. They
Yeah.
could be just holding hands or passing notes to one another.
Exactly. So asking, what does dating look like?
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? And having those early conversations. And I think lean on your school counselors,
Yes.
lean on your support system. If you are having conversations with your teen and you're getting uncomfortable or you don't really know where to go with it or you don't really have an answer, being able to lean on your support system and say, hey, like, this is a conversation I had. I don't know if I did it right. I hear parents say that all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if I did it right. Right? And truthfully, rarely ever can you do it wrong.
That's right.
As long as you're
connecting and
having that
respecting.
conversation and you're listening,
Yeah.
rarely ever.
Yeah.
So true.
Right?
And I think we as adults can recognize, hey, I want to be in a good space personally before I get in a relationship.
There we go.
So I think even sometimes in soft and subtle and kind ways, saying, hey, to our teenagers, let's really just work on our own personal growth and our own journey. If it's
Yeah.
a time where we kind of actually need to be good for ourselves first,
Right.
before we start kind of diving into just partners and all the other complexities of
Because
life.
it is complex.
Being true
Yes.
to ourselves and knowing who we are as people, because as we talked about that identity piece, it's easy to find our identity in dating, in friendships, and all these other things. So
Yes.
how do we be true to ourselves?
$1 million
Love that.
question.
Love that.
Right? It's a good question to ask our teenagers, right?
To ask our adults, actually. Sorry.
It's very
I'm
true.
sitting there.
How am I true to myself?
Yeah.
And I always think about influence.
Yeah.
Am I the person positively influencing other people?
That's right.
Are these people positively influencing me? Or perhaps they negatively influencing me or taking me away from the person I want to be? And practically for dating, I think it needs to start with friends.
Yes.
The advice I always give teenagers is you should try being friends first. Because then if you can do that for a while and that's going well, then, dating might go well. But to add the complexities of dating, especially at this day and age, sometimes things get more physical and different things like that. It's very hard to go back. You can't rewind time. And if you don't have a strong foundation in relationship in any age, how are we going to be able to have a relationship?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tough topic.
Yes,
We just dove
but-
in,
Yeah,
right?
it is
No,
a really
I think
tough
this
topic.
has been an important podcast
Yes.
though for our listeners,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of really great topics that we probably didn't even really have time to touch on. If there's anything specific that you as the listener want to hear, please reach out, let us know. We are always open to having these conversations. Tough part is trying to cram it into.
I think that's what it is, because we
Yes.
probably could have went for another hour just talking about some of these really specific things, but we
Legit.
want to get some key points out to our audience. Reaching out for help, it takes a village. I look at it like the teepee. You need all the poles in a teepee to hold the
Yeah.
teepee up. As soon as one goes down, the teepee could, fall over. So we have to work together, and we have to connect with our kids and be relationship focused all the time.
So true. And parenting teenagers can feel overwhelming, daunting, scary. But the real
Exhausting.
question is, how do I pivot my parenting to meet my teen where I'm at?
Pivot your parenting.
It's not always
See
about
where you're at.
like having the best parenting strategies or reading the best books. It's really about reading your teenager,
Yeah.
knowing where they're at and going there.
Yeah,
Love
and
it.
as a parent, you know your child best.
Yep.
So
Yes.
true.
You can read them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, we have all kinds of topics about communicating respectfully, family, friends, all these drugs, alcohol, this other fun stuff that we might get to another session. So feel free, ask us questions if you want more. We're actually putting out a survey. So we so appreciate your feedback and support this whole year, YMM family. And we're putting out a survey just for some feedback of how you feel like our podcast is going, and also to get some new ideas for season
Yes,
2.
please.
Yes.
We want new ideas.
So how do we access the survey team? I think we're still working on the logistics
We
of that.
are.
Yeah,
Chantel, I
I
think
th-
you're taking
Probably
lead
our
on that,
website.
or-
Yes, we'll put it up on our website, but
Yes.
we'll also send it out through emails through the school. So definitely on our website or through the school email, you'll have access to it.
So good. And we just want you to know this is not just another random survey that we're going to throw in the bottom of a drawer and never see. This is highly valuable because we
Yes.
literally base our podcast seasons around your questions. So we really appreciate the time and effort everyone's taken already to compile and bring this information to us. And we
been
look
great.
forward to hearing more too.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. All right. So this
Because
is Your Mental Health Matters. I sang that one.
Yes.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Please reach out to us if you have questions or comments about today's topic, or questions or suggestions for future topics. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, we encourage you to reach out to local agencies for support, as our podcast is not a substitute for counseling. If you require immediate support, please contact the crisis line or your local hospital.